Howdy, howdy, howdy. Welcome to SportsterProject.com YouTube channel. I'm Hersey, and today we're in the garage with Cory, a buddy of mine, and we're working on his 2001 Harley Davidson Sportster. We're going to be doing just a oil change and primary change. So we're going to change the engine oil, we're going to change the primary and transmission fluid, which is one and the same on a Sportster. You know, just your basic service for this, and yeah, that's about it. Let's get to it. So just before we start, first, Cory rode the bike over here. So it's kind of the best way to do this is with the engine warm or hot even. So he rode the bike over here. We put it right up on the lift, and now we're going to start draining the fluids. There's two places that we drain the fluids from for the engine oil. It's right back here. It's just a hose that has a hose clamp on it into a nub on the frame, and then there's a 5/8 inch bolt that has an O-ring on it that we use to drain the primary fluid. Another thing Cory's going to be doing, he got this new primary cover from Sporty Mob. I'll link them down in the description. So because he's replacing that, he's got a new gasket, new O-ring for the primary drain, new oil filter that'll go on up front, which we'll get to in a few minutes.
Yeah. Got a little 5/8 ratchet action going on here. Ooh, there we go.
So take that out of there. We don't want to just set it over there. We don't want it in the bottom of the oil pan.
Yeah.
So then we'll just take the hose clamp off the engine oil drain. Loosen it up enough to get it off of there. And Cory will pull that off.
Simple as that.
And then I'll bring take the lid off the oil bag, and we'll just let that drain. It's going to take a couple of minutes to drain everything out. Once that gets drained out, we'll put the new oil filter on. So one of the reasons why we kind of have to wait to drain or take the oil filter off is because I want to use the same oil pan. I don't want to dirty a bunch of oil pans. So we're done draining the primary and the engine oil. So I'm just going to move the oil pan up front here, and then we're going to take off the old oil filter. I have this oil filter wrench that's kind of adjusts to when you move it. We'll just put it on there. It's not on there that tight anyway. It shouldn't be. You should put it on kind of hand tight and a little bit. Yeah, and we'll just get it going. Now, it's going to make a bit of a mess. Engine oil is going to run down the front of the motorcycle. Just kind of is what it is, right? There's a bunch of oil in that oil filter. Pull it off. Put it down there. Before we put the new one on, we'll clean all of that up. I'm just going to let the oil kind of drain out of it for a minute or two, and then we'll clean everything up and get it put back together. So the oil filter's off, and got everything cleaned up. New oil filter is what we're going to do is just put a bit of clean motor oil in it, and then just put a bit of motor oil around that seal on the oil filter, and then we'll put it on. Now, when you tighten up an oil filter, you want to know they're tight, but it doesn't need to be like wrenched down. You don't need to muscle it all the way in. You just put it on tight and then give it a little bit of a turn, and that should be enough. It should be on there pretty solid, then it shouldn't leak. We cleaned up all of the oil that spilled out when we took the old oil filter off. So we'll be able to tell pretty quick if it's leaking after we put things back together. All right, so Cory's going to remove the derby cover, and we're just going to inspect the chain and whatnot before we put new oil in it. While Cory's removing the derby cover, I'm going to replace the O-ring on the drain plug for the primary. Take the old O-ring off. There. So we cleaned up the plug. You know, one of the things that you do is just inspect for any large chunks of metal. The plug was actually pretty clean. So cleaned it up. New O-ring. Just slide it down on the plug, and then it's ready to put back in. That thing's still hot.
Yeah, man.
All right, so it's got the derby cover off. We're just going to kind of inspect things. We're going to pull the inspection cover off for the chain and check it, and that's where we'll also fill our oil. All right, so we replaced the oil filter. We've got the primary opened up. Cory's going to go ahead and put the plug back in for the primary, and then he's also going to reattach the drain hose for the engine oil and tighten down the hose clamp on it. Now when you're tightening down the primary plug, you want it tight. You don't need to like seriously torque it down. Just make it tight, hand tight, maybe a quarter turn after. And then he'll put the oil plug back on the little place on the frame and tighten down the hose clamp. So we've got everything buttoned back up now as far as the drain plugs. The drain plug for the primary is back in, and then the drain hose for the engine oil is back off or back in. Cory's going to put on his new Sporty Mob primary cover. Just takes a new gasket on here as well. Fits in a little lip there, maybe, kind of. All right, so the new primary gasket's on, and we're just putting in the bolts for that with just a drop of Loctite. And we'll get them tightened down. Now, again, just like with everything else, these are hand tight, and maybe a little bit more. If you torque them down too much, you risk either stripping the threads out of the primary or warping your cover. Just hand tight, and then a tight more. So now we're just, since we got it all buttoned up, new derby cover and the derby cover gasket, we've got the drain plug back in. Just going to add a quart of gear oil to the primary. Now this acts as both the primary oil and the transmission oil. The manual specifies 32 ounces, so basically a full quart. Let that drain down in there. And then we're going to put 2.5 quarts of engine oil in it. It calls for 3 quarts, but we're going to put 2.5 quarts in, check the level, take it out for a spin, come back, check the level again, and then add some more if we need it. I'm just finishing up with 2.5 quarts of 2050 in the oil bag, and then Cory's gonna start it up, take it for a spin. When he comes back, we'll check the oil level, make sure everything looks okay. Cory took it out for a ride, came back, we kind of went over everything and just checked for any leaks, especially around the oil filter, the derby cover on the primary side, the drain holes, and then just double check to make sure the engine oil level was right. We did have to add about a 1/4 quart after he took it for a ride, so it's all ready to go for the next 5,000 miles, whatever. It's on a Sportster, 2 drain plugs and some fluids. So if you found this helpful, please give it a big thumbs up for a like. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments below. And please subscribe to the channel, I'd appreciate it. Until next time, build, tinker, and ride. Be safe out there.